Welcome to the Women's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Women's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? You've seen pictures, you've heard about it, you've read about it. Today we're going to visit with a woman who is actually there, and I am talking about Desert Storm. I'd like to introduce Cristine Regan. Cristine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I want to hear about Desert Storm. What prompted you to go over there?
Well, I'd been in the service for about 2 years already, and Desert Storm hit in August, and I'd been back about 3 months from my actual training where I learned how to do my job skill, which was an imagery analyst. And reading all the newspapers and just seeing and hearing so much that the people's sentiment were, and thinking about Vietnam, when you're starting to think about the idea of actually volunteering to go over to Desert Storm, a lot of things go through your head.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So I just really started thinking that I should go before someone who had a family and children, because I was single, and that I should go before any kind of draft was implemented. And also I just felt that I had something to offer, that I'd been trained, and I wanted to go in a sense. So
You had high-level clearance from what I remember reading.
Yeah, top secret clearance.
Top secret?
Yeah.
So that made you say, okay, I'm really ready for all this action, or what? I mean,
Yeah, well, there was an amount of that too, but I also wanted to go with people that I knew, and going with my unit was going to be much different than being activated maybe, say, a year later with a bunch of strangers that I didn't know. So there was more of a security in going with like the family that I knew in my unit.
some security.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but it was good. It was actually a really wonderful experience for me.
Now, what made you volunteer to go into the service to begin with, before Desert Storm?
Well, actually, when I got out of high school, I really wasn't into the whole, go off to college 4-year thing. I was actually looking into the Peace Corps, but you actually need a bachelor's degree to do that. And I was working in a restaurant, and there was a convention, and I started talking to some recruiters, and next thing you know, I joined.
You joined?
6 years later.
So you were in for 6 years. What did your family say to you when you said, guess what, Mom and Dad, I've joined the service?
Well, it was really funny because my mother started to cry and actually asked me how she'd failed me and why she didn't love me, why I didn't love her, and that kind of thing. And my dad was really proud. And then once I did it and actually had the experience and traveled as much as I did, then my mother said, wow, that was a really good thing you did. But at the time, she was very upset.
Would you recommend it to anybody to go into the service?
I have mixed feelings about that, actually.
For what reason?
The reason is, when I went in, I was very kind of patriotic, naive, not knowing, that kind of a thing. And then after being in for 6 years, you start to realize that it is a machine, and you are a number, and there's a lot of things that people don't realize about the military, that shots were given that weren't exactly authorized when you were going over there, which they ran out of before I actually went over, so I didn't get them. And there's a lot of things
Controversy?
Yeah, there's a lot of people getting sick from the chemicals, and the government's not taking responsibility, and they should. And so it's, that kind of thing is what would dissuade me from, telling someone to join it. I grew a lot and I learned a lot, but I definitely would probably talk my children out of it.
What would you say was the biggest advantage to going over there? What was the thing that you learned the most? That you could probably translate into your everyday business, your next career?
Well, I guess it's just, I prioritized my life. I started to really think about what was most important to me, the people that were most important to me, what I valued, those types of things. Because when you really don't know what's going to happen, and you're in that kind of situation where there's scuds coming in, and you start to really think about what's most important. And that was good, because I don't know if I'd have done that so soon.
Now, how long after Saudi Arabia did you get out, Desert Storm, did you come back to civilian life?
Well, I was actually reserved, so I was doing it all at the same time. I actually kind of kept a pretty hectic schedule. I worked full-time in the business world, and then at night I put myself through business school, and then did the military at the same time. So at the end of 6 years, I had a 2-year associate's, a 4-year bachelor's, 6 years in business, and 4 years in the military. 6 years in the military.
When did you have time to sleep?
Well, I'm a little hyper, but I do like being very, very busy. I feel like I'm most productive when I'm doing 10 things and contemplating 10 more, you know.
Okay. What did you do after Desert Storm in the military? What did you decide to do?
Well, after, in the military, what did I do after that? Like where I toured or what I did?
Well, let's start with where did you tour?
Well, after I got back from Desert Storm, we actually went down and worked with the CIA in Washington, D.C., which was a very, very interesting experience. And then I worked with our troops in Germany and some troops in California, so it was good. It was very, very good. It was, the way I did things, I really liked the fact that because I did work, school, and the military at the same time, I would learn concepts in school about, you know, how to run, you know, management or whatever, and I would see both how it worked in the business world and the military world and kind of get the best of both worlds. So I felt like I was learning so much more thoroughly. I'd really understand something and more quickly, because you kind of...
Now, how do you feel that you applied this to what you're doing today?
Well, I was always very disciplined. I would always, you know, if I had to do something, I would always get it done or whatever. But I think I'm much more strategic in my life, and that's both from the business and the military standpoints. You know, my business marketing skills teach me to, you know, really strategize and put together a plan for my career now. And the military is more like tactical, you know, day to day. What do I have to do to get where I want to go?
So you're combining both the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing today?
I'm acting.
All right.
I've been acting down in New York City for about coming up on 2 years now.
And you like that? That's your latest?
I love it. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's really good.
Well, between Desert Storm and your acting, you were doing something else.
My trip to India.
Okay, how did you wind up in India? Were you part of the military at that point?
No. Actually, I was a Goodwill ambassador for the Rotary International. I went over with 4 other representatives, and we toured 14, 15 cities in 5 weeks, and we would live with families and go and visit with tribal villages and churches and community centers and government offices and everything and anything you could do in 5 weeks as a Goodwill ambassador.
Now, was this a volunteer project also?
Well, I applied for it. I sent in a letter of application, a letter of interest saying that I was interested in finding out about the program, and then you apply, you write a letter stating why you'd want to do it, and then you're interviewed by a panel of, I think it was 7 people that interviewed you to see if you would be a good applicant, you know, good Goodwill ambassador.
Good candidate?
Yeah, so I guess I passed. And I got
What would you say was the most rewarding part about going over there and doing this for 5 weeks?
That's really tough because there were so many amazing experiences over there. Visiting with the tribal villages and seeing their whole, you know, their whole living style and everything like that. But also living with the families was very kind of interesting, and seeing the cultural differences between a home there and a home here, and what they assumed about me because I was a Western woman and what I assumed about them.
Well, let's talk about that. What did they assume about you being a Western woman?
Well, they were very interested in your romantic life and your, you know, kind of sexual practices and that kind of thing, you know, very...
Were you quizzed by men or by women in this respect?
Women.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
What was the most common question that they would ask you?
Well, they assume that everyone is, you know, sleeping around, and that it's, you know, you don't love the people that you're with and that kind of thing, you know, whatever. That's what they said, you know, it was kind of an implied thing, and, you know, oh, well, you know, you just would sleep with someone before you got married, and I'm saying, well, what do you mean? You know, and they had arranged marriages, and I had thoughts about that, you know, and there are love marriages, and then there are the arranged marriages, you know, so. But stereotypes that they had about Westerners and I had about them, and they start to dissolve, and that's good.
So you build common bridges by doing this.
And you teach each other about their life and, you know, my life.
Do you still communicate with some of these people?
Yes, I've still been. It was actually funny because I was writing to someone, and I met hundreds and hundreds of people over there. So I thought I was writing to this one 12-year-old boy, and then I got a photo back, and it was this 22-year-old good-looking guy. You know, it was kind of funny. I said, "Oh, you're not who I thought you were." That was good, though. Yeah.
So you redirected your letters and
changed
the style,
changed the tone. You know? Okay, I'm not writing to a 12-year-old. It was good, though. It was really, really amazing. There's a spiritual pulse about India that's just really beautiful.
Well, I've never been, and I'm